Welcome into Mississippi State Live here on the Voice of College Football Network. It's Andrew Miller joined by Christian Ballard, and we're back to continue talking about a fun time for Mississippi State, right? Overall, it's positive. You get the massive win, kind of a weird late night show recapping that the last time. What's up, Yoda? Glad to have you in. Appreciate it. Yeah, the late night show kind of was. I had a little bit of a plan for that, but man, we just kind of went at it from all angles. Sort of, I honestly didn't know what to say in the moment. Honestly, that much after Mississippi State gets that win, just a ton of fun to see for them. And we have Christian now who'll be able to give some of his thoughts because he wasn't on the post game show. We'll be able to hear what he has to say about Alcorn State. We will talk about Alcorn State a little bit.
Arizona
State, another ish. We'll talk a little bit about that game. Obviously, we hope Mississippi State can just handle business the way they should in that matchup. But we'll talk a little bit about that game. William coming in, is life pain? Yeah, we're going to get there, and that's going to be in the next couple seconds. We're going to talk about it because that's, I think, a fair reaction. Yeah, I guess before we get into it, and you don't have to get into the recap yet, but just Christian, how was your weekend of college football?
It was pretty good, man. Yeah, no, my team bounced back, played a nobody, and beat them by 73 points. And our quarterback was perfect the entire game, in Ty Simpson. So I guess I had a great weekend, but we had a lot of great games, including Mississippi State and Arizona State. But overall, it was pretty good. We had a lot of teams in the top 25 that just kind of played all these smaller schools, though.
It was a fun weekend, though. There were a lot. It really was.
Like I always love the Iowa State game. I think we had talked about it last week a little bit, just to kind of, give an idea of what we were going to see this weekend. Iowa State pulled it off. I'm a little disappointed because, if I'm being honest, I had made a bet with a friend that Iowa was going to hit their win total or hit over the win total. I needed them to win 8 games. Well, they lost 1, so they better hurry up and get it together, I guess. But, A&M in the SEC, 44-22 over Utah State. Georgia, this one surprised me. I don't know. I think Georgia always, as good of a program as they are, Andrew, they always find a game to slip up in, not like lose, but just they don't have the performance you expect them to have. It was Austin Peay this weekend.
Georgia plays non-conference games where they just know it doesn't really matter how they perform, and they can just kind of get through it and handle business. Yeah. But, I mean, look, we're not even hitting the big games. Florida loses to South Florida. Billy Napier is done. He cannot survive that. Missouri, Kansas was a ton of fun.
Yeah.
Oklahoma gets it done against Michigan. Baylor SMU outside of the SEC was an absolute classic. That was a fun game. It was a really great weekend of college football, and obviously Mississippi State's upset of Arizona State was a part of that. And we'll recap that a little bit more. If you weren't here on Saturday night for the instant reaction show, which wasn't instant, it was like an hour and a half after the game because I had other stuff I had to work on first. But definitely go check that out to sort of get the in the moment raw reaction to that game. One of the craziest games if you're a Mississippi State fan. A win that doesn't happen for the Bulldogs. That we've been on the other end of that many times. We do not see wins like that happen, and it was a ton of fun. Unfortunately,
2 key upsets. Real quick, I'm looking at the schedule here because it's so hard to keep up with every game. I got to point out 2 upsets. One of them is a good team beating a team that probably still shouldn't have lost the game. Fresno State beat Oregon State 36-27. Interesting. The other game I'm going to mention, which I know some West Virginia people, but Ohio, really? I know it's on the road and stuff. I get it, but anyway, I just had to throw those 2 scores out there. 17-10.
Ohio's a good MAC program, and West
Yeah.
Virginia is not good rebuilding under Rich Rod. Fresno, Oregon State didn't surprise me at all. Oregon State's not a good football team.
Oh, I know, but it's one of those weird things though with like, you're supposed to rep your conference. You're supposed to rep the Power 4. And
well, Oregon
for me
State's not.
personally, no, I know. I know. Not now.
I mean, I hate saying that for them because I have nothing.
Yeah.
I'm for the Beavers. I'm for Oregon State and Wazoo were screwed. Like there's no
Yeah.
getting around it. They shouldn't be in the situation that they're in, but it is what it is.
Oh, yeah. I just want to point those out, man. But yeah, it was another good week of college football, but we got even bigger games to talk about this week for sure.
Yeah, and obviously we'll do our picks later in the week on our Thursday night call-in show. That's when we make our predictions for the week. The predictions for Mississippi State will not be all that interesting because of who they're playing, which is why we're not going to spend a ton of time talking about that game on today's show, even though it is sort of a look ahead. But we do have to hit the big news of the day, and I know Will, who is in that comments asking where I got the hat. I got the hat from Maroon & Co. And I did use a promo code from another Mississippi State podcast when I ordered this hat. But yeah, Maroon & Co. This hat is very, very nice, and Maroon & Co. is a great place in Starkville. But William asked, is life pain? And what he is alluding to is that Mississippi State got some pretty rough news this morning during Jeff Lebby's press conference. Officially, defensive lineman Will Whitson and offensive tackle Blake Steen both out for the season. Steen got injured in the season opener against Southern Miss, played much of the first half, but then went down late, did not return to that game, and did not play this week. And then with Whitson, played obviously the whole game against Southern Miss, although it was limited snaps. He only played 25 snaps in that game, and was having a monstrous first half against Arizona State. Was absolutely making life hell for Sam Levitt and the Sun Devils. He tweaked something late, walks off the field in his own power, doesn't return to the game. But I think there was some initial thought over the weekend, like, okay, well, he walked off, and we didn't hear anything about it, but we kind of felt like probably should be okay. Comes out today, and I'm not going to get into the rumors of the injuries, but it's very serious in the fact that he is done for the year. We'll start with the loss of Whitson because that's the one that really, really stings, and not to diminish the loss of Blake Steen. But in the case of Whitson, this is a guy who was, I think, the most important transfer portal addition Mississippi State made this offseason. The biggest name was Fluff Bothwell. That's a guy that, was on more of the national radar, and obviously he's an outstanding player, and we've seen that so far in a short time here. But in terms of the importance and value to the team, I don't think anything was bigger than landing Will Whitson. Mississippi State last year was horrific along the defensive line. They did not have, not even SEC talent. They did not have power conference caliber players up front at several spots for much of the year. You had a few guys who ended up when it was all said and done playing okay. You've had a few guys that last year weren't great that have improved this season. So, you guys grow and get better. But last year, that was like a Sun Belt level group out there along the defensive line for Mississippi State. And that is the key reason why their defense was so bad. And it was pivotal that this offseason they went out and added big-time players along the defensive line. And you can only do so much. I knew State was not going to go out and land a ton of high-profile names, and Whitson wasn't even necessarily that big of a name. But coming out of Coastal Carolina, where in 17 career games, he had been very productive there. Missed most of last season with injury, but through the first few games of last season was putting up huge stats and was on pace for a big year. That was a guy that, there was some early NFL draft buzz that not being talked about as a high round guy, but someone that hey, NFL scouts have their eye on this guy. Think he's got some ability to him. That is someone that when Mississippi State picked him up, it's okay, they are bringing a guy in with proven production that scouts think can play at the next level. Clearly that is a more proven player than anybody else that State added at the most important position group that they had to address this offseason. And through 2 games, you were seeing it. He really impressed in the season opener against Southern Miss. Again, only played 25 snaps in that game. But in that game, it was 4 tackles. It was 2.5 tackles for loss, a sack, and also 4 pressures. And he earned co-SEC defensive lineman of the week honors because of that showing. Did all of that again in 25 snaps against Southern Miss, and should have had a couple other big plays. He should have had another sack earlier in the game. Comes back against Arizona State. First half of that game, 4 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and a huge sack of Sam Levitt for a big loss there, and was just creating so much havoc up front for the Bulldogs. And it was, my guy Colton Watson put out the tweet. Mississippi State has already gotten their NIL money's worth of Will Whitson through 1.5 games. He was making that type of an impact. He was putting up numbers, and I understand that early in the season, sometimes guys have numbers that they don't build upon the rest of the year, but he was on pace for like an all-SEC caliber season. And it was very clear what having a player like that up front did for the Bulldog defense. And now he's done. And you saw in the second half when State did not have him, clearly it made a difference. Now, as I said on the reaction show, do I think losing one defensive lineman made Mississippi State go from shutting down the Arizona State run game to getting bowled over the way they did in the second half? No. That was the case of the whole defense starting to bog down. Arizona State clearly found a matchup that they were able to take advantage of there in the trenches. State's defense, I think, was worn out because of some of the pressure the offense was putting on them by not putting together drives for so long. And look, I think we're not at a point where we can talk about a State defense being able to give you 4 quarters of dominant play. That's probably a little bit unfair of an expectation. That said, if you have Will Whitson out there in the second half, I don't have any doubt you're in better position than you would have been. Maybe it doesn't come down to a final possession in the way that it did. He's that good of a player. And State has depth along the defensive line that they did not have a season ago. State has options at defensive end. State's got other guys up front that have shown flashes, but Christian, they don't have somebody else who has been as impactful as Will Whitson so far. And it's a big loss.
Yeah, it is a big loss, and this is not a team. I mean, this is a team that has some depth and some rotation, but there's a big difference between, hey, we lost the guy, it's okay, we can have him step up, to the difference of we lost a key piece, like a leader, in Will Whitson. And yeah, you can find a talented guy probably somewhere on that roster that could step in and fill those shoes. But I felt like he was such um, just a really good defensive leader. And it's going to be interesting to see how he or how the guys behind him can step up, in place of him. And I know that he's on his last year of eligibility. They're going to try. I think Jeff Levy had said that they're going to try to get him a medical redshirt waiver. Um, and he had looked even really good in that first game, I thought.
Oh yeah, he was SEC Defensive Lineman of the Week. I mean, he was very impressive.
Yeah, and it seemed like as if things were looking very up for Will Whitson, for the whole defense. And then all of a sudden, he takes that injury against Arizona State. Now, I know that if you could, you'd prevent stuff like that. Life's going to happen. You're going to get hurt in football. It's a contact sport. But I think I'm not saying this is something that Mississippi State can't rebound from, but it's not going to be what we thought it would be with a guy like him.
It's a major loss for sure. And defensive line is one of those position groups where having one stud really matters. It kind of gets talked about as that is a position where it's better to have one stud and a few average guys than a few guys who are like slightly above average across the board. Like having a big time impactful player along the defensive line really changes things for what you're able to do defensively from a pass rush standpoint, from a run stopping standpoint. It helps you out significantly. And now State needs other guys to step up. And look, we saw Jaray Bledsoe in the season opener make some flash plays. He got banged up in the Arizona State game. We have not heard anything about his status going forward. I'm not sure if he returned or not after exiting the game, but that's a guy at nose tackle that you want to have back. Calvin Dinkins, also along the defensive interior, is someone that State fans have been waiting on for a long time, who hasn't been out there because of injury. He made some flash plays and performed well against Arizona State. So you're going to need more of that. But at defensive end, for those guys that are going to get off the edge, Deontay Anderson made a really nice sack in this game, probably the best play of his career, just barely being able to trip up Sam Levitt for a loss, where if he doesn't make that play, Levitt probably gets some good yardage. That was a really impressive play. That's a guy who had a good offseason. They're going to need more out of him. Trevion Williams, also playing defensive end. That is someone that they need to take a step forward. And I think the overall consensus was that he did perform pretty well against Arizona State. They're going to need more and more. And, look, maybe you also turn to your guys at Jack linebacker, Brandon Jennings, Malik Sillick, and those guys become more of true terror pass rushers off the edge. State needs these guys to step up. Can they withstand this injury? Yes. I think they have enough good options that the defensive line's not going to suddenly just go back to being what it was a year ago. They will still be better. But this is a big blow, and they desperately need someone else to emerge as a true game wrecker. On the other side of the line of scrimmage, losing Blake Steen, don't want to completely just diminish this, but there is the fact of, look, the one game you had him, the one half you had him, he was struggling. And since that point, State has changed things up a little bit and has probably been a little bit more settled at tackle after having to step in and replace him. That said, the guy was named your starter for a reason. Clearly, that is a player that you were expecting to have to rely on this season. And I'm willing to say, even against Southern Miss, week 1 of the season on the road, when this is a guy who transferred in during the summer, so he did not get to go through spring. He was only there for the fall practices, working with a new group. I'm willing to acknowledge that it might have taken him some time to step in and gel with the other players there. So it is a significant loss. That is a guy who is a power conference starting offensive lineman for the past couple of years that was coming in to play the same role for you. You want to have that guy as opposed to not. That being said, I think you are still okay here, because once he went down, they took Albert Reese from left tackle and put him back out to right tackle. And Albert Reese performed really well, impressed in that spot. He did really well the second half against Southern Miss. He earned SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week honors this week, at the right tackle spot. So it feels like he is someone who, look, when he was named a starting tackle, we were a little bit concerned about that coming into the season. It looks like he has grown in that role, and I think he's going to be in for a good year. So I think you feel okay there. Then you add in over at left tackle, Jimothy Lewis, when he had to step in at left tackle in game 1, played solid. Now, he didn't play this last week. They turned to Javen James, of all people, a player that none of us were expecting to contribute this year, transfer out of Maryland. And that's a guy who did not travel to Southern Miss. Not only didn't play, he didn't travel to week 1. And they had to start him out of necessity this week. He played outstanding. I don't know if he gave up a pressure the entire night against Arizona State. Maybe he probably gave up a couple, but it was a good night for him against a pretty good Arizona State defense. So if you're getting that performance out of a player who's being thrown into the fire, I feel pretty good there. And then you also have Luke Work back, who I don't know how much he played against Arizona State. He didn't start even though he was available, but that's a guy who last year, even though he's playing guard this season, was a starting left tackle for 6 games a year ago, plus started a game at right tackle. So if you had to go to Luke Work and kick him back outside, you could. And so far, State's interior offensive line has performed pretty well through 2 weeks of the season. So Blake Steen, it's a tough loss, but I think State's offensive line can withstand this and can continue growing.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, they got dudes. They got size. They have talent out of high schools and stuff. But here's the only thing that gets me with offensive line, Andrew. I don't always trust the freshmen, and I'm looking at their roster here. They got at least 5 or 6, and then the rest of them are like sophomores or maybe some juniors that maybe don't have all the playing time in the world. Obviously, when a guy goes down, someone's got to step up. And usually, if you're on the bench, it doesn't mean that you're bad or anything, but it does show that, hey, I'm not the go-to guy at the moment. I'm just waiting for my number to be called. And I I feel like State is not the team out there, even though great win over Arizona State this weekend. But I still don't think they're going to be that team that's like, hey, we got this no matter who's out there. Like, I feel like that's where, and I really hate to say this, but do you think with changing the offensive line up a little bit, are we going to see regression for the offense as a whole? What do you say?
Well, no, I mean, look, they only had one half of steam. So they've played to this point 3/4 of the season that they've played have been without him.
Yeah.
And I would say the half that they did the half that they didn't have him, so or the quarter I guess of the season so far that they did not have him was probably the worst that State's offensive line has looked. Now, to be fair, State's offensive line as a whole for this season has not played well. Pass protection was actually pretty good against Arizona State. That was not an issue. The sacks that were taken in that game really go back on Blake Shapen, or also coverage sacks. Like Arizona State a few times did have good coverage downfield, and despite good pass protection up front, you can only protect so long. So pass pro was fine against a pretty good Arizona State defensive front. Run blocking has been an issue so far, and that is something that they're going to have to grow with for sure going forward. But I'm not too worried about it. You are right that, like, yes, few teams can really withstand to lose a starting tackle and be okay. But I think
Mm-hmm.
the one thing that is a saving grace here is the one time that we saw him. Like State has improved since that point. Like they've had other guys step in and perform better. Again, I'm trying to belittle the loss. I hate that for the guy because he was coming in to be a starter. Clearly, it is a significant loss. And look, it becomes a bigger deal if you do have other injuries, which offensive line, those guys tend to get hurt. Last year State was very lucky up front; they stayed relatively healthy. If you start suffering other injuries, all of a sudden it becomes a much bigger deal. But I think State can withstand it. But overall, yes, two very significant injuries for the Bulldogs. They're going to need players to step up moving forward because you have all this momentum now after this big win. You can't let a couple injuries completely derail it. You've got to continue finding ways to build. Let's
For
talk a little
sure.
bit more about that win. Obviously, Christian was not a part of the post-game show, but he's gone through and watched the game. He was watching a lot of it live. He went back and watched the recap of it as well. So just what are your thoughts on the performance, Mississippi State against Arizona State? Big upset in Starkville.
Yeah, dude. That was a signature win. And you can't say that about a game every single week. But this was it. This was that stamp. Now, there's two, like, I know there's going to be the two types of people out there. Well, Arizona State's not that good. They lost to Mississippi State. Or if you really want to get into it, Mississippi State might actually be pretty good that they beat Arizona State. This isn't an Arizona State team that we had talked about leading up to the game. They didn't lose too much. Maybe had a transfer in and out here or there. Lost Cam Scatterbo, but they had Sam Levitt return. They had leadership at quarterback, wide receivers. um, and this is a team that is, I think, still up there to compete for the Big 12. So, with that all being said, Arizona State, I don't think with Kenny Dillingham is going to let this loss derail them. I also would say that Jeff Lebby should take note and not get his head too big over a win like this. Move on from it. Be happy for it for 20. Be happy about it for 24 hours and keep going. The game itself, Sam Levitt, I think, is a pretty good quarterback. Now, I don't know if he's NFL caliber, but I thought he had a terrific season last year, and he was a big factor in the Sun Devils' success. To hold him, Andrew, to 82 passing yards and get two picks off the guy, the defense, outside of giving up 20 points, they played tremendous, man. I thought they looked really good. I thought the pass rush was really good. The man coverage, secondary, everyone came together at the right time in this game for Mississippi State. And then you look at Mississippi State, and Blake Shapen lit it up. 3 passing touchdowns, 279 passing yards through the air. Fluff Bothwell, the lead rusher at 34 rushing yards off 8 carries. Granted, he didn't really find the end zone there. But you found Brendan Thompson twice. So I think Mississippi State just wanted to make a statement that we're better than 2-10 last year. This is our house. This game was in Starkville, by the way. They wanted to show that, yes, when you come to SEC territory, you're going to get lit up. And even though it was only a 4-point win, it comes down to the wire, late touchdown pass with 30 seconds left, 58 yards to Brennan Smith, or Brennan Thompson. I'm sorry, Brennan Smith. But yeah, I think everything just fell into their hands. I don't want to sit here and say, first off, like, I don't think that Mississippi State got the luck of the draw and they were just able to find a way to win. I think they worked hard for it, and ultimately you saw the better side of this team. And credit to Arizona State, they played one heck of a game too.
Yeah, look, ASU does deserve credit for fighting back, getting down in that environment 17-0 and finding ways to, in the second half especially, they took full control of the game. But for State to be able to find a way to get it done at the end, you talked about the defense. Yeah, pass rush was very good for much of the game. Secondary played really, really well. When Jordan Tyson is not able to have a big game, that speaks to what State's defense was able to do stepping up. And first half run defense was there as well. Now, second half fell apart. And second half, Arizona State was really able to get their run game going. But when State had to have a stop there at the end of the game, the defense stepped up again. That goal line stand is absolutely massive. And to be able to hold on and give yourself a chance to not just, okay, we give up a touchdown, we're going to be down a touchdown, we have to score a touchdown just to tie the game. To give yourself a chance to, we have a minute and a half to go, we have the ball to go win the football game. That's huge to be able to have that. And to just, for the offense, look, they struggled, right, for a lot of the game. Blake Shapen, like you said, statistically, it was a big day, and he delivered some big throws. But as I talked about it on the recap, there was a lot that if you actually are just going play by play, a lot that you didn't love with what you saw from him. But with the game on the line, they come out and execute it. And Brendan Thompson that guy is going to be really, really good, I think, this season for MSU. And really impressed with what we saw out of him and making those plays. I talked about it earlier. That is not a win that you get if you were Mississippi State. Mississippi State has been on the other end of it so many times. There have been so many times where Mississippi State in the first half of a game came out, played well, was competitive, and this is across multiple sports. And you're like, okay, State's going to get this big win, and in the second half, things just start to fall apart. And then the team that most people would expect to get it done find a way to get it done, and the Bulldogs lose in agony. Often with State losing in the manner that they won this game. Having something like that happen it is one of the craziest wins in team history. It's going to be one of the most memorable wins in team history. And this is a foundation starter for the program. I went into this a lot on the recap show, just what that means for you, both for the guys in the locker room and what they can accomplish the rest of the season by having this momentum and the belief that comes with it, what it means selling the program to future players and recruits, and being able to look, this is a big recruiting weekend for State on campus. They had a lot of players, both for this class and for future classes on campus. And to be able to get the win in the manner that they did and have that atmosphere inside of Davis Wade Stadium that was going absolutely berserk, and tell them, like, this is what Mississippi State football is going to be moving forward. You can come be a part of this, is huge. Like Jeff Lebby, earlier in the offseason, we talked about some of the recruiting stuff, and that the hold up for Mississippi State at the moment is that there is just no proof of concept. That if you are a recruit, why are you buying into this program right now? If you're an offensive player, Jeff Lebby's always going to get guys who can play offense, because all those guys can always look at his track record and say, yeah, I want to go play for that guy. But high-level defenders and the guys you have, if you're going to be successful in the SEC, they're have no interest in Mississippi State right now, because you see first-time offensive head coach who's struggling. You see a first-time defensive coordinator who is struggling. You see a program that is struggling mightily. Why on earth would you want to go and be a part of that? Saturday night was why. Saturday night was the reason you want to go be a part of it, because you've got this young blossoming program, an energized coach who's got a fan base now energized and bought in, because that's the third part of it is now the fan base is on board. If you were part of the Bulldog fan base, you are in on Jeff Lebby, you are in on the direction of this program going forward, because you have been given a reason to. You showed out for this game, created an unbelievable environment inside Davis Wade Stadium. And I think you're going to get even more of those going forward. And you've got to buy into the fan base. Like, recruits see that and are going to buy into that. And that's just going to be so big for this program going forward. This feels like a chance to continue building. Now, where you go from here is sort of the next question. And it does become a question. Okay, I do have to say, comment from Reese. If anyone ever doubts Shapen's arm strength, just remember he overthrew the fastest player in the country. He did. He had an overthrow against Brennan there in the second half. Should have been a touchdown and overthrew him, which is absolutely crazy to say.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Shapen's got a good enough arm. Hey, Shapen's got the arm for this offense.
Like we said too, like we've talked about before the season, all we needed for Shapen, like we're not calling him the best in the SEC. We're not even calling him the best in the country. His issue wasn't even talent. He just needed to stay healthy, and glad that he has so far.
Yeah, I mean, look, a healthy Blake Shapen could be a good quarterback for Mississippi State. He's got things he has to clean up from this last game. Some of the sacks were not great. The refusal to check down the football was certainly not ideal. And there were some things in the pocket that just didn't look fully great. But Shapen is a guy that they can win with. Shapen is a guy who can make big winning plays for them for sure. And, okay, so spinning the win forward. And it's like, well, what does this mean for the program moving forward for the rest of the year? You feel like they're going to win the Alcorn State game. And we're going to talk about that game a little bit here in a bit. They should beat Northern Illinois. It's not a surefire thing. That's obviously a program that expects to be able to compete with power conference programs. They go in and beat Notre Dame last season. They were competitive with Maryland this week and played a close game with the Terps. Now, I don't think Maryland's a very good team, but NIU expects to be a team that can compete with power conference opponents. Mississippi State's going to have to take them seriously and still give a good effort in that game. But you are going to be big favorites in your next two. You should be 4-0 going to Tennessee. And then we want to talk about like fan buy-in, the atmosphere in Starkville when Tennessee comes to town. And that's a game that could either be an afternoon or a night game. I hope that's another night game in Starkville. And if you're 4-0, it probably should be. That's going to be a crazy environment that, frankly, I mean, I'm going to try to be a part of. At this point, I'm saying I'm going to try to go to the Tennessee game and see if I can make that happen. That is a game that could be huge for the program. You want to start talking about continuing to build forward. And, okay, now you had this moment where you get in the national spotlight, and it's been really cool to see, like, the stories and the reactions come out to this game, like, how much Mississippi State fans deserve this, how much the program deserved this, so the Starkville versus everybody mindset that people are buying into, all of the talk about how cool the atmosphere was in Starkville, and the reaction to just the crazy play and what that brings you. Like, you have so much attention. That attention gets even bigger if you're talking about you can go and beat Tennessee. And, I mean, if you're 5-0, I mean, who knows what this thing becomes. And we look the rest of the way for the season and, have expectations changed after the Arizona State win. Look, I mean, I had this team – I ultimately settled on 5-7 as my prediction. Could they still go 5-7 at this point? Yes. But, I mean, man, that'd be a disappointment to win – assuming you win your next two. Frankly, 5-7, I think, is a disappointment no matter how you cut it, because either you're saying you win the next two and then you only find one SEC win over your final 8 games of the year, or you're saying you lose to either Alcorn State or Northern Illinois and then win in a couple other games. And I'm telling you, if you lose to either Alcorn State or Northern Illinois, no one cares if you win a couple SEC games. People are going to be ticked off. So I think expectations kind of have changed a little bit. Like, it is now 100% get to a bowl game. And I know there's probably a lot of you listening that are like, well, that was already the expectation for me. I was a little bit lower just because of where the schedule was at. My perspective was I can buy in on this team being improved enough to play at a bowl caliber level, but them being actually bowl eligible was going to be another discussion because of how difficult the schedule looked like it was going to be. Now, again, you should win your next two. So you have 8 games. Can you go 2-6 in the last 8? When Tennessee, I get, looks really good right now, but they gave up a lot of points to a Syracuse team that had to go to overtime against UConn. All right.
Yeah.
Like maybe Tennessee's still not that good. We had questions about them coming into the season. I know the offense looks better, but like they gave up a lot of points to a Syracuse team that had to go to overtime with UConn. Look what just happened to Florida. I know that game's on the road, but look what happened to Florida. And that is a Florida team that going into that game has to play. God, they still have Miami. They still have LSU. I think they play Texas and Texas A&M. Like, that is a brutal stretch of games for them before they have to play Mississippi State. Arkansas is still a team that they haven't done anything in 2 weeks because the two teams they've played, what do you take away? I don't think Arkansas is going to be that great of a team this year. So, and then Ole Miss has not looked incredible. So you start looking at these games and it's like, man, you're going to have some opportunities. Williams says, maybe not an expectation, but the hope was a bowl game. Like, I think preseason, that was fair. Like, having a hope for a bowl game, I'm not going to tell people they shouldn't have had hope for a bowl game preseason. You could convince me of it.
You have to change it now. You have to hope for it now because, like,
now it becomes an expectation, to be completely honest, which is I don't want to fully put that on. I still have to slow my roll because I do want to are going to go back and talk a little bit about what we have seen from the team so far. As like, okay, what has been concerning through 2 games? What has been a positive through 2 games? How do we extrapolate that out further? But if you start off the year 4-0, man, you better find a way to go to a bowl game. And we're here assuming 4-0, and we could look really stupid in the next couple weeks if they don't. But they should be 4-0. Reese, beating Arizona State gives us a straightforward path to get to 6-6. We will push for 7-5. I still expect to go 2-2 at a minimum between Tennessee, Arkansas, Missouri, Ole Miss. I will say, Missouri is a team that preseason I just was like, what the heck? I'll give Mississippi State the win, largely because of where the game fell on the schedule. The game is between Oklahoma and Arkansas for Missouri, like road trips to Oklahoma and Arkansas. Mizzou looks good. Mizzou's offense looks a lot better than I thought it would, and they still got a good defense. That's going to be tough going on the road. Missouri looks like a much better team than I thought they would be. But as for Tennessee, Arkansas, Ole Miss, I would put Florida over Missouri as you're going to have a chance against Florida at this point. So there is absolutely a path to bowl eligibility, and it should at this point okay, get this thing to a bowl game. You get this win early in the season, you have to continue building off it. I think it'd be different if this game happened later in the year. If this moment was later in the year, it's a little bit different because it's you're not talking about starting off 4-0. But if you're 4-0 to start the year, you got to find a way to get to 6-6. And that's going to involve having to improve some things the rest of the way. But I think at this point, you're talking about it's got to be the expectation is now firmly a bowl game.
And the thing is, too, is you beat Alcorn State. Let's just call it what it is. They're going to beat Alcorn State. We get that. They're probably, I'd say, give them a 95% chance to beat Northern Illinois. This is a team that was pretty interesting and tricky last year. Ask Notre Dame. But you win those next 2. You set yourself up. You just got to win 2 more games. And again, like you mentioned, Florida looks so suspect right now. They did not impress me the other day, and it's to the point that even the Florida fans are chanting in the streets, "Fire Billy," And then you got Arkansas on the road. I haven't really watched Arkansas yet this year, but I'm sure that they're, bottom of the barrel in SEC. I mean, they're 2-0.
It's blowout wins against. They played Arkansas State last week, and then week 1 they played an FCS team.
Well, they're fixing to go to Ole Miss this weekend,
We
so
will learn a
we'll
lot about both of
see.
those teams.
We as Mississippi State fans and media need to watch a game like that because you take care of them. I mean, this is not about getting wins on your resume for the top 25 for the college football playoff. This is just at a minimum, like you would love to have that. Like it'd be a dream come true if State could pull off some miracle season like that. It wouldn't be a miracle season at this point to make a bowl game. It would be expected, and that's where we set the bar right now is you win 6 games. I don't care what 6, I don't care what 6 you lose. Get 6 wins, make a bowl game, and depending on who you play in the bowl game, go out and win it and then use that as momentum in 26 and so on.
It's definitely reasonable. And look, the other part of it is just the momentum from getting this win, what it means for you going forward. Again, that Tennessee game, if you're 4-0 going to Tennessee, that is going to be the best environment that Mississippi State has had in a long, long time in Starkville.
Yes.
And last night was
Yes.
crazy. 2 nights ago was insane. But the Tennessee game will probably be even crazier, except we may not ring the bells the entire game because it's an SEC game and, can't get fined, which we did find out today. Mississippi State officially fined the $500,000 for the field storming, which who cares? It's worth it. You had to storm the field. You had to have that moment.
Yeah.
We'll find out if we hear anything about the cowbells, but I doubt it, frankly, because it was a conference game. The cowbell rule is mostly just for SEC games. So sucks to suck, Arizona State. Your fans can cry about it all you want. Look, you're going to get momentum out of this. Now, what I was talking about a second ago with the team and what do we take away through the first few weeks? Offensive line has got to be better.
Yeah.
And I know we talked about it a little bit with the Blake Steen injury. That is a group that I think pass protection wise has looked pretty good to this point. But when it comes to run blocking, it's just really not been there. And excuse me real quick while I sneeze. I wasn't able to sneeze. So we'll see if the sneeze comes back. That's great. Run blocking has just not been great. And now look, Arizona State is a very good team when it comes to defending the run. And that's part of what they want to do. That's their philosophy on defense is take away the run first. But State's got to be better with this going forward. And, yeah, the beauty of a live show. Love it. Reese, attendance was North just 50,000 for Arizona State. Cut up the goalpost into 1-inch bands. Charge everyone $100, including a certificate confirming what it was. There's your $500K. Love it. Yeah. Make the absolute most of it.
Fair enough for me. Yeah, fair enough.
But offensive line's got to be better for this offense to be better going forward. So far what we have seen is an offense that is very explosive, but they are not at all consistent. They struggle to sustain drives. Now, this is a system that thrives off explosive plays. This is a system that tries to create those big explosive plays, and explosive plays are one of the most important things you can have as an offense. You want to have the ability to be quick strike, hit those big plays down the field. No doubt about it. That is a huge key of thing you want to do is hitting the big plays. But there are times you also have to be able to nickel and dime your opponents a little bit. There are times you have to be able to get those 5-6 yard gains with consistency, and they've not been able to do it all that well. And there's basically 2 options. Either there's the one side of it, which I think most people would lean to, which is you got to get better at running the football. And that was a point of emphasis for them in the offseason. I talked about it in the preview for Arizona State. I don't believe bulking up the offensive line, getting better tight ends in, getting Fluff Bothwell was a matter of them saying we are going to be a run-first team or a run-heavy team. But I do think it was them saying when we have situations that we need to be able to run the football, we can lean on the ground game. So far, through 2 weeks, they've not been able to lean on the ground game. Now, again, to be fair, when Arizona State's kind of loading the box, that's one thing. William, when you have 2 very running backs, you better be able to run the ball. No, I agree. And this is the problem, though. Even though you have 2 talented backs, if your offensive line sucks, there's only so much those running backs can do. And both those guys made some plays. And the offensive line doesn't suck, but they've got to get better up front. They have to be able to do a better job of blocking in the run game. So that is something that you can lean on. The other side of it is you could diversify your pass game more. This is something Levy did more of at Oklahoma with Dylan Gabriel and the group of receivers that he had. They didn't just run the old school Bryles, everything is a deep shot down the field or deep shot or comeback offense. Like they had a more diverse passing scheme where they found a lot of different ways to throw the football. We've seen some of that at Mississippi State. We haven't seen as much of it this year as I thought we would. Now, against Southern Miss, I totally get super vanilla offense. They were kind of pretty basic with a lot of stuff they were doing offensively against Arizona State as well. And it surprises me a little bit to see some of the stuff they're doing in the passing game, how simple they have kept it. And I don't think that's going to change the next couple of weeks because the opponents that you're playing. But I'm curious if by the time you get to Tennessee, what you are breaking out from a pass game standpoint, because that is your other option. I don't think you can continually throw the football as like everything you do for the focus of your offense if you are only throwing a vertical shot or throwing a comeback, which is mostly what they do. You have to have some other ways that you can throw the football. So they've got to get better from a consistency standpoint of moving the ball, which is going to come back on the offensive line. That's the big thing on offense. Everything else, Blake, I mentioned he was a little iffy in the second game despite a big stat line, but I think you're mostly fine there. Defensively, honestly, at this point, it just comes down to who steps up for Will Whitson. I don't know what I would have said about this if he wasn't healthy, because as good as they have played, I can't put much on the defense. They have got to find somebody else who can be a big-time pass rusher now. That is kind of the big thing for them. Can you find a big disruptor? If they find someone who can adequately give them what Will Whitson gave them and get more consistent moving the ball on offense, this team is going to be good. And there is a fair point to be had that Mississippi State is 2-0 and two games that could have been very losable. Even the Southern Miss game could have been losable. They are 2-0, and they have not played a complete game either time. They're 2-0, and they've had some very clear mistakes both times they've been out there on the field. That's the sign of a team that's got good potential. If they clean things up and fix a few things, this could be a really good ball club.
Yeah, I think it's the little things, like my grandmother says, she says, just take care of the small things and the big things will happen for you. And that's where Mississippi State's at right now. They don't have major concern, major issues. Maybe a few, but it's those small little things of, can we amp up the pass rush a little bit? Can our offensive line play a 4-quarter game? Can we be consistent in this area or that area? And you saw, even though they got the win, you saw that this was not a perfect performance against Arizona State. This Alcorn State team this week, Andrew, this is the perfect game to have a perfect game. I'm not saying you got to make every throw, every touch, every drive's got to be a touchdown. Well, actually, let me say this. I think with Alcorn State, maybe you probably do want to, as Mississippi State, you want to score every drive, but it doesn't have to be an 80-yard bomb every time. If you want to get creative and only get a couple yards here or there, that's fine. But the small things, the not a whole lot of penalties in the game type of thing. I
haven't listened to Peyton in a while, but I guess he says that. I used to listen to Peyton quite a bit. I have nothing. Peyton put up a Starkville versus everybody signing the show, so shout out to Josh Pate. I just haven't listened to a show in a long time.
Well, I'm just saying that every detail of the game of football matters. It's like life, and Mississippi State's got to find those small things they're not good at and just continue to improve on those, and they'll be right where they need to be by the end of this season.
You do have a good point. Look, this is an opportunity against Alcorn State to fix a lot of things. It's a chance for a couple guys to heal up, although obviously there's no healing up for Will Whitson and Blake Steen. They're done for the year. But a guy like Jet Jefferson, you don't want to have to bring him back, which we haven't seen him yet, but that's another corner that once he's healthy, he was having a good offseason, had a good camp, that I feel like that's a guy who contribute. Offensive, can you get some things sorted out up front with the offensive line against a team in Alcorn State that you should take advantage of? Look, if State has struggles along the offensive line against Alcorn State, then we actually do have to start having some real long-term concerns for what this team's going to be this season. Like, this should be a game where the offensive line, you just play clean, and it shouldn't be a concern. That's going to be a really important thing for them to get those things cleaned up. But yeah, look, if State can correct some of the small errors, we're talking about a team that could end up having a really nice season. And look, they're already receiving some votes for the top 25. I was a bit not surprised they're not ranked. I thought they'd be a little bit higher. They're like number 32 in the receiving votes category, but or 32 overall, so they are in receiving votes. But if you're 4-0, I think you're going to be ranked going into the Tennessee game. So you have a chance to get yourself into the national spotlight a lot more. Bowl projections already coming out with Mississippi State. I saw a Birmingham Bowl projection, and I'm like, man, I'd kill for a Birmingham Bowl right now. Like, that's not something you would normally say, but I would take it right now with where the program has been. Like, this one from T. Watley, getting Burrows up to speed should be pretty big. Yeah, Jamil Burrows, someone that they wanted to count on the defensive line, didn't get to play week 1, got some snaps in week 2. It's that someone can be a big impact player for you. That would be absolutely massive. So this is a week to get a chance to really take a step forward. So let's talk a little bit about Alcorn State. And look, there's not much to talk about with regards to the Braves. This is a team that I don't remember where they were picked preseason in the SWAC, but I know last year they were a team that had high expectations and went 6-6. They're 0-2 on the year. They lost 20-10 to Northwestern State, which Northwestern State has been a bad program the last few years in the FCS, and they beat Alabama A&M 41. They lost Alabama A&M 41-31. Look, this is just not a great team. Offensively, they're going to run the football. That's kind of the lead thing. Jacorian Sewell and Reggie Davis are sort of the two guys there in the backfield. Both average 88 yards a game for Sewell, 58 yards a game for Davis. Those guys both over 25 carries and really take the bulk of the rushes. So it's sort of that two-headed rushing attack that they're going to lean upon. Jalen Tolbert at quarterback to this point of the season, completing just 54% of his passes, 350 total yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Not much of a threat with his legs. They don't have a receiver that jumps off the page. I know I think they have a preseason all-SWAC offensive lineman. It's sort of one of the guys they've got. So, yeah, this is a team that's just going to sort of lean on the run game. If you're talking about a team, like your chances of success are just running the football as a SWAC team and you don't really have a dynamic run game, I have a hard time thinking you're going to be able to get much going against Mississippi State. Now, look, hey, well, give us an opportunity to shore up the run defense. Sure. Now, how much are we going to take away from it? I guess, but the other side of it is if Alcorn State's able to run the football effectively against Mississippi State after the way State played in the second half last week, or I say last week when it was 2 days ago, yeah, that becomes a little bit more of a concern. Alcorn State defensively, overall, they're giving up over 30.5 points a game, 187 pass yards a game, or 187 rushing yards a game so far, about 172 pass yards, but they really haven't been thrown on all that much to this point. Just not a very impressive defense. Stamari and Edwards at linebacker has 20 tackles to this point. TJ Jasper with 18. Don't have guys who just jump off the page. Statistically, they don't have a sack so far in the season, only 2 quarterback hurries. Not a bunch of 9 tackles for loss through 2 games. Okay, I mean, that's okay, I guess, for their level. 1 interception so far. That's from Orlando McLaurin. Look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you this is a defense that Mississippi State should be able to do anything against other than whatever they want, right? Mississippi State offensively should be able to score at will, which if we're going to turn this into, okay, what do we want to see out of this game? Number one is everybody stays healthy. Do not withstand another big injury. If you have somebody who is even sort of questionable, they do not need to be out there in this game. There's absolutely no reason for that whatsoever. Number 2, and this goes into what T. Watley comes in with, do you expect to see extended snaps for KT against Alcorn? Hope so. Like, this needs to be an opportunity for Kamario Taylor, but also for Luke Krobenhock as well, because I think he's still probably the true number 2. Those guys need to get to play. I kind of want to see – I'll be completely honest. If your first-team offense goes out and it has you up 21-0 after the first quarter, pull them, right?
Yeah.
I'm first quarter. I don't care. Go ahead. If you want to keep some of the offensive linemen in, keep some of the receivers, I'd actually be okay with that. Like, I would say get Shapen out of the game. If you get up quickly, get shaping out, I'm okay letting the backup quarterbacks though work with some of the starters on the offense. I think that would be good for them to have in the game, and I'm okay leaving a few other guys out there. But you definitely are wanting to rotate bodies throughout this thing. But the big thing you are looking for is how do some of your young guys play? Do you see some flashes from players like a Ricky Johnson at receiver or some Frisco McGee? Do you see Xavier Gayton, who we really haven't talked about in a while at running back, like become more of a factor here? Obviously, so much is going to be put on the quarterbacks and what can they show, because it's a big opportunity for them. Defensively, you talk about guys like Tyshawn Willis. You talk about guys like Tyler Lockhart. Both those linebackers are young guys people are excited for. Really, I mean, those are the names that people are going to want to watch. But I'll also be looking defensive line. Look, I don't expect I'm not going to take anything away from a defensive line performance against a team like Alcorn State. But at the same time, do you have a guy that just is consistently in the backfield every single play? That'd probably be a good sign for you to get something building now that you've lost Will Whitson. Ultimately, though, you're just looking for young guys to come out and perform, and you're looking to stay healthy.
For sure. Is there any, like, I guess I'll ask for offense and defense. Like, you said pull them, like if we're up in this game, if it's like 30-0 or 45-0 or something, if we're just balling out at halftime, pull the guys, get some younger guys in, experience, get them on the field. Is there anyone that stands out backup wise that you would say jumps off the page as if he can perform well in this game, we should probably, definitely give him more opportunities going forward, but like there's not really many starters or anything on both sides that could lose their job if someone up and performs like very well, right? Like the starting lineup seemed to be set in stone, and so far through 2 games has looked pretty good on both sides.
Yeah, no, they did change up the starting lineup a little bit based on some of the injury news, but that came out today. But no, I mean nothing that was unexpected. I would be kind of interested at left tackle, Jimothy Lewis, as well as Javen James. Obviously, James gets the surprise start against Arizona State and handled it really well. Jimothy had to play a lot against Southern Miss and handled it pretty well, and that's the guy who's like the big-time talent that everyone's anxious to see. I'd like to see the two of them out there and look at how they perform and see if you can extrapolate anything off of that. Does anybody have either of those guys really stand out? Again, I know it's opponent-wise, it's hard to take too much away. But I would look at offensive tackle, young skill talent. I mean, this is a chance to flash and show your worth to get on the field. Look, there's an important point to be made that in the receiver corps specifically, so far, Brennan Thompson's been really good. Anthony Evans has been really good. No one else is impressed. Jordan Mosley, I would say, has been a disappointment. That's a guy who's a starter. That's a guy who's like a fifth-year player, senior, that was a starter for you last year, and to this point in the season last year was much more impressive than we've seen from him thus far. Aiden Williams has kind of not really done anything to this point. Has a couple catches. Seydou Traore at tight end. I know it's a different spot, and I don't think you take Seydou off the field because I don't think there's another tight end who's going to be a more productive pass catcher than him, but they need someone else in that receiving core to take a step forward and flash. Running back, I'm not really worried because you've got the duo with Booth and Bothwell, but you also know that Johnny Daniels is really good too, and that when he gets opportunities, he was good last year. He was the number 2 back last season and played really well. So as the number 3 guy this year, he played really well in the season opener. Now I don't think he got a carry against Arizona State, which, we'll see if you can get him more involved going forward. But receiving core specifically, you'd like to see some guys break out and have a big catch, make some big plays. That's something I'm going to be watching for. Defensively, I think much of my attention is going to be on, the guys up front and seeing if you have anybody emerge. Like, can you have a guy go out and have a 2-sack performance in this game? Like someone really get after Alcorn State. Like that's kind of getting the big thing I'm going to look for on defense. Is there someone that you see make those flashes that says, okay, yes, the opponent adjusted. You can't take too much away, but he had a nice, stellar performance. You can build that. I think that's what you have to look to. Look, I don't know. Are we even going to make a score prediction? Should we just say like Mississippi State a lot, Alcorn State a little? I don't think there's.
I love predicting though. I mean, if I had to guess, 42-3. I don't know. There, I made one. Okay, but I don't know if it's worth the trouble.
Put 50 on the board. Like they need. State's offense should be able to score at will. State's defense, this is a game where, with the exception of a fluke play or fourth string guys in the game in the fourth quarter, Alcorn State should not be able to score. Defense should shut them down. Bill Connolly, who does SP Plus, put out his projections for the week, and I think the projected final score for this game was like 50-3, based on like what the SP Plus model put out. Yeah, it needs to be something like that. It needs to be a performance like that. I mean, that's not a score prediction for me. That's just needs to be a total beatdown. Look, obviously, we didn't go super deep into talking about Alcorn State because this is a game that, no offense to the Braves, proud program within the state of Mississippi, that, look, a few seasons ago, we would be talking about Alcorn. It's like, hey, look, Mississippi State shouldn't lose to this team at all, but they're worth talking about and breaking down a little bit more. There's not that great right now. And Mississippi State is 63-7.
I would take
something
that.
like that. I mean, I think it was 63-3 was the final score. We'll get Mississippi State's first game in 2018 against Stephen F. Austin. Mm-hmm. I think they put 62 on Northwestern State, Dak's senior year. It should be a very, very lopsided score. It's just not a good Alcorn State team. Not the program that they were a few seasons ago, and Mississippi State should be able to handle business. You do like that in a key letdown spot for Mississippi State, coming off the most emotional and thrilling win in many, many years. They're not having to turn around and play someone who could – I mean, Northern Illinois, I know in IU, you get a week off before you have to deal with them, but especially not having to deal with an SEC opponent or another power conference opponent. Good for them that they get this a game that they can kind of just go out and, if they sleepwalk through it, it's not going to look great, but you probably should get away with it. Just to be said. So, like I said, we're not going to go super deep into this game because it's just not necessary. I thought the bigger thing today was to talk about, one, the ramifications of the injuries, because that's such a big deal. But two, also getting into, okay, you get this win. What does it mean for the rest of the season ahead? And we both feel convinced this team, it's getting to a bowl game. That is firmly at this point, you need to be talking about bowl eligibility. This needs to be a big year 2 for Jeff Lebby. Take advantage of the opportunity you put ahead of yourselves. We'll be back on Thursday for our call-in show. We've been doing that around 7 Central-ish, I think, 8 Eastern. I think that's been about when we've been going. We'll obviously finalize the time once that day comes. But, yeah, we'll be back Thursday evening. Call-in show, your opportunities to get in and talk about whatever you want to talk about. Look, I'm sure many of you will, if you want to, you could talk about the Arizona State win. We would love to hear from people who were at the game. If you can call in and talk about the experience, talk about getting to storm the field. I think that'd be really cool to get a chance for Bulldog fans to come in and recap what was such a massive moment for the program and just a really fun night to be a Mississippi State fan. But look, if you have any thoughts for the season going forward, we would love to hear them as well. And we'll give our SEC picks for the week in that episode. That's going to do it for us this evening. Thanks, everybody, for joining in. As always, swing your sword. Hail State.
College football is even more exciting when you've got some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread, and I've got a 40-plus year track record. 11-0 in the college football playoff for me last year against the money line, 8-3 against the spread. And I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill of Wager Talk is our ace in the hole, show stopper. 7 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick. 28-12 against the spread the last 3 years. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Corey Bratta, Matt Zemek, and Steve Dace. Check out those numbers. Become a YouTube or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and then select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2025 a winner now.